Good afternoon, Modesto Junior College, and welcome to the Fall 2024 Speech Night. My name is Professor Ryan Dye, and for the last decade, it has been my extreme pleasure to have the opportunity to direct the speech and debate team here at Modesto Junior College. We are so excited to have you with us tonight, and we are really looking forward to putting on a great show for you all. Before we get going, just a couple of brief housekeeping things. First off, I'm guessing there's probably a couple of folks here that are doing this as part of a class requirement. If that's the case, as you came in, we tried to give everyone one of these programs. You'll notice inside the program, on the first page, there are the list of the speech and debate team members, as well as the events that you're going to see this evening. You're going to get a really wide variety of things, including platform speeches, limited preparation speeches, a poetry program of oral interpretation, as well as a debate. If you're doing this as a class assignment, your instructor should have given you directions about what they want you to do in order to complete the speech night event. Here's a good tip that applies not just here, but in general. Listen to your professors. They'll usually steer you right. But if they didn't give you that feedback, or maybe you missed out on it, a good way to do is just to go ahead and fill out the critique sheet. There are 4 slots in the middle of the program for you to evaluate the 4 speeches that happened in the first half of the show, and then the last 2 pages are dedicated to the debate. Almost every faculty member I know has folks fill out the whole thing, so save yourself the trouble of having to remember stuff later, and go ahead and do the whole thing if they ask you to do that. The other thing is, I know we all have these awesome devices in our pockets that connect us to the entire world and pull us into algorithms that do things to our brain. For the next 90 minutes, if you all don't mind, if you could go ahead and silence those and turn them off, it's less distracting for you, less distracting for our performers, and will hopefully present a better event for everyone. With that, let's go ahead and get things going. The Modesto Junior College Speech and Debate Team is one of the oldest programs at Modesto Junior College. We got our start the year after the college opened, and so in the spring of 2022, several members of the student body came together to form a debate society. That debate society started having tournaments, traveling to places like Berkeley and Stockton. As the 20s went on, the team grew, it became co-ed, it included a wide variety of folks from Modesto Junior College, and we started traveling all over the country, including heading to national championships starting into the 30s. And so for the last century, Modesto Junior College students have proven themselves to be some of the best orators in the country and even the world. The individuals that you're going to see before you tonight are the next generation to take up that mantle. But one of the things that you likely have in common with the folks that are going to be on this stage is many of them kicked off their speech and debate career just this semester after having been in the same seats that you are last spring. In reality, most folks find out that we have a speech and debate team when they go to their first speech night. So as you're watching the performances tonight, whether it is an impromptu speech or a platform speech or a poetry program or a debate, if this is something that you find yourself interested in and you get yourself thinking like, hey, you know what, that's something I can enjoy doing, we'd love to talk to you and have you join our team in the spring. We're a full service team, which means we do something like 17 different events. It's like track and field, but we're speaking. We travel all over the state and country. We take students to tournaments. We put them up in hotels. We put them on planes. And it's a really fantastic opportunity to both grow your skill set as a speaker, but also to get more out of the college experience. And I think that that's one of the things that we should really embrace now. This is the fullest I've seen this auditorium since COVID. And I think that tells you something. It tells folks they want to be here. They want to participate in events that happen here on campus, and joining a team like the speech and debate team is a fantastic way to do it. So if you're interested, hit us up. We also have our website on the back of the program. Before we get going, I just want to give a couple of quick thank yous. First off, I got to give it up for the MJC Speech and Debate team. Get up there whole Thursday to put on the show. Let's give them a free I also want to give a big thanks to all of the technical support and staff that we get here from the Tech and Theater Department, both running the sound, getting us mic'd up, ensuring that the lights work and everything is copacetic. We definitely couldn't do that, so let's give it up for our behind the scenes folks. Last, I'm just incredibly thankful to both the School of Arts, Humanities, and Performance, including our Dean, Rob Stevenson, and our division secretaries who have been selling tickets for us all week, answering questions on the phone. Those people rock. I couldn't do any of this without the faculty here at Modesto Junior College. My fellow comm studies folks have been rocking it, getting speech night going, recruiting folks for us. In fact, like half the department currently is in the front of the house, helping people find their seats so the students can walk across the stage. So, you know what? Why not? Let's give it up for your professors. All right, y'all, that's it for me. I'm going to go ahead and now turn things over to my partner in crime. Give a huge round of applause, co-director of forensics, Professor Tori Shemp, to introduce the team.
All right, everybody, good evening, and thank you for joining us. Today, I have the privilege of introducing each member of the team to you. So please join me in a big round of applause for Belle Beglinger, Savannah Clendenin, Mason Crump, Swan Fuentes, Avery Iglesias, Brian Huntley Jeffers, Ethan Jennings, Cecily Mundo, Joanna Newman, Chad Roslin, Emma Tran, and Oscar Vasquez. Big round of applause for the whole team. At this stage, I'll turn it over to our two MCs, Dryden and Avery.
The first event you will see tonight is an informative speech. This type of speech is meant to offer a well-rounded and objective explanation of the speaker's subject.
The speaker you will hear from tonight is Emma Tran. This is Emma's first semester on the team. She recently took 4th place at a tournament with this speech. Please welcome Emma with a big round of applause.
So you know those Sephora kids that have been running rampant in your local Sephoras, burning all the samples, discarding open products all over the floor, and being excessively rude to both customers and workers alike? Well, these behaviors can all be a reflection of children who don't receive guidance or boundaries from their parents. Given this growing trend, perhaps it's no surprise that there is a widespread curiosity among the new generation about how to be better parents, or at least better than their own parents. According to an article written by Fox 5 in April 2023, between April 2022 and April 2023, inquisitive caretakers looked into the authoritative parenting style more than any other practice. Today, I will be informing you on authoritative parenting and its ability to pass on a new kind of generational wealth that has nothing to do with money. We'll be exploring what authoritative parenting is, how to successfully execute it, as well as some of its benefits. Now, first, let's examine the authoritative parenting technique that embraces both warmth and firmness. In 2017, the American Psychological Association defined authoritative parenting as nurturing, responsive, and supportive, yet set firm limits for their children. They attempt to control a child's behavior by explaining rules, discussing, and reasoning. They listen to a child's viewpoint, but don't always accept it. Now, here's an example of what that may look like. Halloween this year lands on a Thursday, a school night. One parent might forbid their child from going out at all, or another might let their child stay out all night and skip school the coming Friday. Sounds great, doesn't it? However, an authoritative parent would negotiate and level with their child. They'll start early that night to get a decent amount of time trick-or-treating, but once that clock strikes 8 p.m., it's time to head home, get ready for bed, and be up in the morning for school. Now, I'm sure most of us have heard the recent trend of gentle parenting. Gentle parenting is often mistaken as a more permissive style of parenting. It is seen as letting children do as they please. However, that's not true. According to an article written for the publication Parents by Kimberly Zapata, updated in August 2023, gentle parenting is parenting without shame, blame, or punishment. It is centered on a partnership as both parents and children have a say in this collaborative style. Furthermore, when a parent yells at their child, the child might not always understand what they're doing that warrants that yelling. In contrast, gentle parenting would explain to their child what the problem is and correct that behavior for the future. Understanding the approaches of both authoritative parenting and gentle parenting is important because, as child psychologist Mona Delahoupe told CNBC in 2023, parenting works best if you mix styles. Now that you know what authoritative parenting is, let's hear how to successfully execute the technique. Authoritative parenting takes a lot of patience. It requires a parent to be both firm and soft with their child. They explain what their expectations are for their children, as well as plan for bad behaviors. Since the holidays are coming up, let's stick to that trend. Let's say we have this family, and let's say that family's holiday tradition is to spend Thanksgiving at grandparents' house. In order for this Thanksgiving to run smoothly, the parents need to explain to their children about what their expectations are and plan for those bad behaviors that are most definitely going to happen. They will set the expectation that their children need to greet everyone in the house before going off to play. They'll set a limitation on electronics to ensure that their children are spending quality time with their children. According to an article in Cleveland Clinic, written in August 2022, it suggests to try to stick to a plan. If bedtime is always at 8 p.m., try not to deviate from that. If you put your foot down on a decision, stand your ground. The more consistent you are, the more your children will understand and respect your expectations for their behavior. Now, back to our example. Their child is caught playing on a phone rather than playing with their cousins. The parents will take the phone away in the moment, explain why that behavior was unacceptable, and set a restriction on electronics when they're at home. Now it is up to both parents to enforce that consequence when they're at home. Another helpful tip for authoritative parents is to encourage positive behaviors and minimize negative behaviors. According to Candace Nelson's May 2023 article in Mayo Clinic, she states that a helpful approach can be to use praise and positive reinforcement to encourage desired behaviors. Ignore annoying but not dangerous attempts at getting attention, such as banging on a wall or whining. Now, this method is known in psychology as operant conditioning. Most people associate this method with training dogs. And in fact, raising kids and training dogs really isn't all that different. Both involve a lot of treats, a bit of patience, and hoping no one chews on the furniture. Turns out, operant conditioning works wonders for both kids and dogs. It's been shown to be very effective in encouraging desired behaviors and minimizing negative behaviors. Now, granted, everyone is a perfect parent, right? Or that is until they are one, and there's a lot of parenting advice seemingly designed to make caretakers feel like they are never doing enough. But there are some real benefits to the authoritative approach, so let's highlight the big ones. Authoritative parenting has been linked to children's emotional regulation, their academic success, as well as the family system. Now first, it helps develop a children's emotional regulation. Children have been shown to express their emotions better when they see their parents doing it in a healthy manner. In a peer-reviewed article written by Amanda Sheffield Norris, she states that, indeed, parents who express a great deal of positive emotions in the family are likely warm and supportive and respond to children's emotions in accepting ways. Thus, parents who express positive emotions are likely authoritative parents, warm yet firm in nature. These parents tend to raise children that then repeat that behavior throughout their own lives. They're better able to express their emotions and self-regulate. Secondly, authoritative parenting has been linked to children's academic achievements. In a peer-reviewed article in 2023 in PLOS ONE, Nayab Ali found that authoritative parenting has been positively and significantly associated with children's academic achievements compared to permissive and authoritarian parenting. Authoritative parents work with their children to create and maintain goals. They create a safe environment for their children to reach out and ask for help when they need. This helps children excel in school since there is a focus on schoolwork, but also a maintenance of trust and warmth. Now, finally, in an article for Business Insider written by Beth Ruth in July 2024, she expresses how an authoritative parenting style has been beneficial to both her and her partner, as well as their 2 kids. And here's a little background on Beth Ruth. She grew up in a 2-parent, 17-kid household. Could you imagine? That's a lot of kids. And as anyone would assume, it was quite unstructured. Thus, parents had little to no time to spend with each kid and rarely ever dished out punishments. Beth Ruth vowed to be different than her parents when she had kids. With her partner, their authoritative parenting style has been beneficial in continuously helping improve their children's behaviors. Both children receive productive emotional conversations about their bad behaviors, as well as receive appropriate consequences. Now that you see the benefits of authoritative parenting, let's review what we've discussed today. The importance of authoritative parenting in today's society cannot be overstated. We have explored what authoritative parenting is, how to successfully implement it, as well as highlighted the numerous benefits that children experience. By embracing an authoritative parenting style, we can prevent those kinds of disruptive behaviors seen in those unruly Sephora kids. Let's strive to be the generation of parents that not only seeks to be better than those before us, but also commits to raising considerate and well-adjusted children. Together, we can foster a future where our children contribute positively to society rather than leaving it discarded on the floor.
The next event is impromptu speaking. This is a limited preparation event. In this speech, the speaker is given a set of random prompts and only has 2 minutes to prepare a 5-minute speech. Despite the time limit, the speaker is still expected to be organized and deliver the presentation with style.
Tonight's impromptu speaker will be Swan Fuentes, who won a finalist award in this event at our recent tournament. This is Swan's first semester on the team, so please join us in a big round of applause.
Opening prompt.
Seconds used. Used. Minute 30 used.
The Good Place and The Bad Place. The Good Place is a show that aired in the last decade regarding an individual, Eleanor Shellstrop, who lands in the good place. She made it to heaven, at least a version of it. Spoilers alert if you haven't started the show, it's actually the bad place. Sorry. However, this reminds me of my quote, the perspective of the good place and the bad place. The truth is a matter of circumstance. It's not all things to all people all the time, and neither am I, by Natasha Romanoff. I agree with the statement. I interpret this as something saying that truth is relative to the person's reality. First, we will be looking at politics, and specifically political parties. Secondly, we will be looking at Frida Kahlo. Lastly, we will be looking into philosophy. First, let's look into politics, specifically the political parties in the United States. A lot of things are seen as black and white, blue and red in this example. However, it's all relative. Something that the majority of the side in the red side agrees with something, there always could be one person who agrees with it on the blue. That doesn't mean that automatically they jump into the red side. It just means that we are complex as individuals. There's not one thing that can fit us all into one box. There's not one label, not one of anything that can change us, how complex we are as humans. Next, let's look into Frida Kahlo. Frida Kahlo is an amazing Mexican painter who was alive at the same time as Diego Rivera. They dated, a little bit weird of a relationship with the age gap, but that's none of my business. Frida Kahlo has an amazing art. Some people will consider her as selfish and self-centered because all of her art revolves around her. That isn't the case. That's not the case. That, to her, it's how she sees herself. It's how she sees the world, which makes total sense. It's her own perspective on her world and the individuality that she represents for herself. Truth is a matter of circumstance, like we saw on our quote today. It is not something that can be defined by one person. Not one fact can be interpreted the same by one person and the next. Next, let's look into philosophy. The study as a whole. We all see different perspectives. A book that comes to mind immediately is what we are to each other, what we care for each other. It's related to something, what we are. What are we to each individual here in this room? Maybe there's someone here you know, maybe there's someone there isn't. There's a complexity between all of us, all of our interpretations. Attending this event, maybe you didn't need, you had to because of a class, but maybe you will end up enjoying it. There's something that shifted in your perspective. Something will happen tonight, something will happen later in life. No one is set in stone. We're complex. What matters the most, though, is how you see yourself and how it represents you. Going back to our quote, the truth is a matter of circumstance. It's not all things to all people all the time, and neither am I, by Natasha Romanoff. I agree with this statement and interpret it as the truth is relative to the person's reality. First, we looked into this political system in the United States, the red and the blue, followed by Frida Kahlo and how her art was an expression of herself, though others can see it as a selfish and self-centered act, almost narcissistic. Lastly, we looked into the study of philosophy, how we change as individuals. Going back to The Good Place. That show, Eleanor Shellstrop strives on earning her spot in The Good Place by studying philosophy. She wants to make a change for herself. She wants to change her perspective on herself and to others. She wants to achieve more than herself.
The next event is poetry interpretation. In this presentation, performers seek to move audiences and make their point by embodying the characters and inviting viewers to become immersed in the act of storytelling through poetry.
The performer you will see tonight is Sabrina Clendenin. Sabrina won a finalist award with this performance at a recent tournament. Please join us in welcoming her to the stage.
Half my love poems will not be heard because half this love cannot be expressed because I'm not supposed to love half the people I can. So far, I stand alone in this. Today, in bisexuality, pick a side. Why should we? We have the right to shut up. Belong. I'm a candle burning at both ends, but light bends around one side. It does not know how to go straight. It only knows how to burn. Today, in bisexuality, top 17 list of gay celebs. Bisexual celebs have been listed as gay or lesbian. If you could please, we said what we said below. And it was a tough lesson to learn, but now I know how to hide half my life. I decide what people see in me, and so far it's the fire that burns straight, but it's love, not hate, that I hide. If I kiss a woman, I'm a lesbian. If I kiss a man, I'm straight. I have this illogical need to scream at the heavens from atop a cliff, to scream, I'm here in this world, I exist! How many of you like women? How many of you like men? How many of you are too scared, too embarrassed to admit you like? According to a 2017 Stanford University survey, only 19% of those who identify as bisexual have come out to the people in their lives, compared to 75% of those who identify as gay or lesbian. I've come out to my parents 3 times now, and I still don't know if they believe me. When I tell anyone, including my parents, that I'm bisexual, I get a look of disbelief so often that I've come to be embarrassed and even question my identity. On top of this, a peer-reviewed study from the June 2024 issue of Sexuality Research and Social Policy points out that bisexual individuals deal with what's known as double discrimination. By erasure from both the heterosexual population and the gay and lesbian community. But bisexuality is real, and we deserve to be seen and heard. We are not confused. It is not a phase. Using the poetry Bisexual by Rebecca Lamb, The Fight for Visibility 2 by Kimberly L. Piper, and Half My Love Poems by Manasi Mead. Bi enough. A program because no one should have to prove their sexuality. Half my love poems will not be written because half the time I'm smitten by grace, by beauty, by poise, all wonderful qualities not always found in boys, so I hide half my life. Today, in bisexuality, gay marriage and people are gross. Then avert your eyes and it's called same-sex marriage for a reason. I'm bisexual, and when you don't acknowledge that, you erase belong. To say I'm just bisexual is wrong. To say that a certain aspect of me is the most oppressed is wrong. I'm a woman, I'm bisexual, I have Tourette's, I have depression, I could go on for hours saying I am, saying statements that describe me. But I'm a poet. And when I feel, I really feel, and half the times I don't know how to deal with it. I'm a poet. And when I fall, I really fall, not with half my heart, with all of it. Today, in bisexuality, y'all say y'all like girls but always marry men. It's so stupid. Did you ever stop to think it's because queer women isolate and shun us? Did you ever stop to think most of us are fearful of coming out because we have to deal with biphobia and always defending? Blunt. I'm oppressed and stereotyped by the society I live in, so Why is being bisexual the one I defend the most? I asked myself this daily until I found the answer. Every other fact about me is undeniable. I have a vagina. I have diagnoses. That is tangible evidence. I have no sheet of paper with the signature of some fancy MD, nor do I have some body part that labels me as bisexual. I'm a poet. And I have my pride, even when my nerves are fried and my knees are weak and my head is spinning. It's a never-ending game of hide and seek that I know I'm not winning. And I'm made to feel my love is sinning, so I wait to heal, but the weight is filling me up I go. I know love feels like heaven. Today, in bisexuality, bisexuality isn't real, but it's called LGBTQ because the B stands for you are just confused and experimenting, but I'm the B in LGBTQ and blonde. There is no definite way to tell if I'm bisexual, which makes it easier for people to say, you're just confused, or it's just a phase, and no matter how often I tell them it's not, they won't believe me. They don't believe me because I don't have the evidence they want. I don't have an MD signature. I don't have that bisexual body part. All I have is my own knowledge, and I don't ask for much, but only half my love comes cheap. I trade the other half for too many cigarettes and too little sleep, and it feels like I'm drowning, but I can't go in too deep. It feels like too many heartbeats for one ribcage, like too much love for one poem or one page, like too much hate for a world so full of disgrace, like everyone's laughing at me and I need to keep a straight face, like I'm down for the count after too many bouts, like at the end of the day, only half my love counts. We act like we can measure love, buy it, barter it, like a box of Lego blocks, like anything even depends on whether or not we fit together, like human beings are a formula and aberrations can be tamed, like this is an aberration and aberrations can be blamed on anything except your ability to accept them. Unplug. Recharge, reset. All my love makes me stop in my tracks, break twice as hard, though this heart double size can break twice as hard, twice the people to my love, twice the starts, twice the departures, twice the art, and only half the reach. Only some will hear it. We're not used to so much love. We're scared to go near it. It's a strange kind of love. Not hate, but we fear it. Though it's everywhere, as wide can go, as deep can be. There's so much of it everywhere. And only half that we can see. Half my love poems will not be heard until all love can be treated equally.
Next, you will hear persuasive speech. This is a presentation that seeks to identify and describe an ongoing problem. The speaker uses emotion, logic, and credibility in an attempt to urge the audience to act on a controversial issue.
Tonight, Belle Beglinger will present her persuasive speech. Belle recently took second place with this speech. Big round of applause for Belle.
I am a farmer. I am a part of a community that works day and night with no days off to grow and produce the food that we eat every single day as the product of the hard work, dedication, and the resilience of farmers. But today, many farmers are carrying a burden that is too heavy for them to bear, and that burden is costing them their lives. The suicide rates among farmers and those in rural agriculture are alarmingly high, both in the US and around the world.
According to a July 2023 journal article in Rural Mental Health, farmer suicide rates are at least 2-fold higher than the general population. This crisis isn't just a series of systematic problems and systematic stories. It is a problem with deep roots. Today, I'll talk about the main problems, solutions, and causes that could save the lives of those who feed the world. Let's begin with the problems. The numbers speak for themselves. Farmers are disproportionately affected by suicide. Rural communities, which are known to be tight-knit and close to one another, have witnessed the losses of their most essential members time and time again. The consequences of each suicide ripple through families, communities, and local economies, breaking down the fabric of rural life. Take the tragic case of Randy Vogel, a dairy farmer from Wisconsin who'd taken his own life in 2018. As a result of, from an interview with Randy Vogel's family on NPR, he was overwhelmed by financial losses and mountains of debt caused by trying to keep afloat in the industry. Like many in his position, he felt utterly isolated and trapped by the pressures of running his family's farm. Randy's story is far too common, and it's an urgent signal that we need to act before more lives are lost. One of the leading problems farmers face is financial hardship and crushing debt. Farmers face unpredictable markets, unpredictable changing government policies, and the volatility of commodity prices, which can shift from year to year. In 2019, the U.S.-China trade war contributed to the steep decline in soybean prices, resulting in massive losses for American farmers. Many, like Nebraskan farmer John Thompson, from a story told by the Rural Health Information Hub in 2022, had to take out loans, sell their equipment, and mortgage their properties just to stay operational. These loans pile up, and when prices fail and markets crash, there's often no way to recover. Farmers clearly deal with a significant amount of problems on the regular basis. What are the factors contributing to this? Let's examine the causes next. 3 major factors stand out: stressful demands of regulations, unpredictable effects of climate change, and isolation. Regulatory pressures and market competition make it nearly impossible for many small-scale farmers to thrive. For example, Steve Hickson, a pig farmer from Ohio, expressed his frustrations with ever-changing rules around tariffs, exports, and animal welfare regulations. He said it makes it difficult to stay competitive in the market. In an article posted by the Ohio Pork Council in 2021, these compounded pressures result in an emotional and physical exhaustion, which can drive farmers deeper into despair. Furthermore, farmers face the unpredictability of natural disasters and climate change. Looking into the case study Mike Brodekorb's experience with climate change, Mike Brodekorb, a farmer from Minnesota who had lost half of his crop in 2019 due to flooding as a result of increasingly erratic weather patterns. These climate disasters are becoming more common, leaving farmers vulnerable to forces completely out of their control, leading even to more stresses. Finally, farmer suicides are exacerbated by isolation and stigma in rural communities. Farming is often a solitary practice, with many hours alone in fields or tending to livestock. For many farmers, there's no time to access mental health care, and rural areas frequently lack the necessary infrastructure to provide psychological support. In an article titled Faber's Food for Thought, Can You Hear Me Now?, posted by AgProud in 2023, Dwayne Faber, a dairy farmer from Washington, had spoken publicly about his mental health struggles in the agriculture industry. He says many farmers, particularly men, feel ashamed to admit when they're struggling emotionally. By the time they do seek help, it's often too late. Ty Higgins, the spokesperson for the Ohio Farm Bureau, had told the Ohio Suicide Foundation Prevention Foundation in an article Last Access of September 2024, I think farmers see themselves as strong and resilient, and they are, but they very rarely want to show a sign of what they consider weakness. Adding to this, access to mental health services in rural areas is limited. A 2020 report from the American Psychological Association found that rural communities often have few, if any, mental health care providers, and those that exist are usually located many miles away from the people who need them the most. For example, in Montana, some rural communities only have one psychiatrist for every 10,000 people. However, there are actionable solutions that we can pursue to help our farmers. Let's identify these solutions. Addressing the crises requires a multi-phased approach that tackles the financial, mental health, and systematic stresses our farmers face. First and most immediate solution is providing financial support and debt relief to our farmers. Governments need to step up and offer farmers the same protections they offer large corporations in the time of financial needs. In France, farmers have access to income stabilization programs which provide subsidies of years of poor harvest or market failures. In the US, by expanding crop insurance programs and offering low-interest loans, can reduce the financial burdens on our American farmers. Additionally, nonprofit organizations like Farm Aid offer direct financial assistance to farmers facing bankruptcy. Expanding these types of initiatives can provide our farmers with a financial safety net during tough times, in which lead would help reduce the desperation that leads to suicides. A way you can help support Farm Aid's initiatives is by donating to Farm Aid or attending the annual Farm Aid Music Festival, where all proceeds go towards farmers in desperate need. Second, we must improve access to mental health care in rural areas. Telemedicine, for example, offers farmers with an opportunity to seek mental health care without having to leave their homes or farms. Expanding government funding for telehealth services would bridge the gap between rural farmers and mental health care providers, offering counseling and support for those who need it the most. But just providing access to care is not enough. We also need to address the stigma around mental health in rural communities. Public campaigns targeting farmers, like Start the Conversation, started by the National Farmers Union, encourages open discussion about mental health. These efforts reduce the stigma associated with seeking help, making it easier for farmers to get the support that they need. Finally, we need policies that help farmers manage excessive stresses of farming. Governments can implement regulatory reforms to reduce unnecessary burdens on our small farms, providing them with the flexibility they need to stay afloat. Support for sustainable farming practices like promoting drought-resistant crops and renewable energy resources would help farmers adapt to a changing climate. In addition to providing farmers with training and resources to manage their businesses more effectively would go a long way. Programs like AgriSafe teach farmers about financial management, stress reduction techniques, and mental health awareness, empowering them to take control of their well-being and their businesses. Today we saw that the suicide crisis among farmers is not just an agriculture issue. It's a human issue. Examining the problems, causes, and solutions, we showed that the men and women who feed the world are suffering in silence. But we have the power to change that. By offering financial assistance, expanding mental health services, and addressing the root causes of farm stress, we can help save lives. The stories of Randy Gopal, John Thompson, and Mike Rodecorp are not just isolated tragedies. They're wake-up calls, people. We need to act now to provide for our farmers as they have provided for us, with the resources that they need before more lives are lost. It is time that we plant the seed for a brighter future.
We have come to our final event, debate. In this style of debate, speakers are randomly assigned to argue opposing sides of a controversial issue. Debate is a true test of critical thinking and strategy because speakers must often argue for a side they may not personally agree with. Despite this, the speakers must identify and present a valid and compelling case in order to win.
The team who presents the best arguments for their side is declared the winner. In this debate, you will hear from an affirmative speaker and a negative speaker. Tonight, our debaters are Mason Crump and Ethan Jennings. Mason recently took bronze in this event while Ethan won silver. Please stand by 1 moment as we prepare to start the debate.
this house to order. As a reminder to the audience, debate is an interactive activity. Please knock, clap, stomp your feet, and say "hear, hear" if you think the debater is making a good point. This will help keep things exciting, while also letting the debaters know what arguments you like. I now recognize the debater from the affirmative team to deliver a constructive speech not to exceed 5 minutes.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for coming here and battling this round for us. And I'd like to also thank my teammate and opposition, Mason Crumper, representing litigation. All right, so today I am here to be responsible for affirming the resolution that pursuit of plant-based diets is detrimental to society. For our weighing mechanism today, we're going to be using preponderance of evidence. If you don't know what that means, I'll help you out. Basically, it means depending on whose evidence and claims strike you, the audience, as the most true, is the person who should win the debate. Are we all clear? Excellent. All right, so let's get into some key definitions for this debate. First, pursuit. According to Oxford Languages, this means the action of following something. Next, plant-based diet. Eating patterns that focus on eating foods primarily from plants, according to the Harvard Medical School. And according to Oxford Languages, detrimental means tending to cause harm. Then again to our first argument. Contention 1, agrarian focus. Some people live in areas where crop production is difficult. Their disinvestment from meat consumption harms their sovereignty and their way of life. According to the Global Food Justice Alliance, people of the Americas, Arctic, and desert regions of the earth do not have access to a robust enough agricultural industry to be self-sustaining. Further disinvestment of these peoples and regions from their access to their meat resources will harm their sovereignty and forcing them to further participate and be dependent on states and regions with strong agricultural industries. Policy that pursues plant-based diets that disinvest people from their meat resources in favor of agrarian society has historically been a tool of colonialism. According to Emory University, during 1870, white Americans participated in the deliberate mass slaughter of buffalo in the American Midwest as an intentional effort to destroy the sovereignty and culture of the indigenous peoples. The access to this meat resource in a region where agriculture was difficult was integral to the indigenous peoples of the Americas. When it was taken from them via policy of the white settler population, this forced the indigenous peoples to assimilate with white American culture and lose their political identity as a people. The consequence of this policy was the loss of the sovereignty of indigenous Americans within the United States. The consequence of pursuing a plant-based diet in society is that we may be intentionally or unintentionally participating in a tool of colonization. Plant-based diets and food products being imposed by foreign powers can harm the indigenous populations. According to a study from the World Health Organization, a major contributing factor to obesity in modern Polynesian peoples is the introduction of white rice and white bread. These are plant-based food products that are defined as complex carbohydrates. Complex carbohydrates are low in fiber and nutritional value while high in caloric density. Introducing and promoting these cheap but unhealthy plant-based food products harm the indigenous peoples of the Polynesian Islands. This proves that the introduction and promotion of plant-based food products to indigenous populations have a historic precedent for harming indigenous populations. Contention number 2, globalization. Disinvestment from meat resources requires globalization to supply sustenance to regions without substantial agricultural industry. According to Harvard Business School, one of the many drawbacks of globalization is the carbon footprint created. The construction of trade and transportation networks, including airlines, shipping vessels, automobiles, roads, and energy sources required to fuel them are leading contributors to global warming. The further removal of sovereignty from peoples and regions without access to these robust agricultural industries will require further construction and strengthening of globalization, as trade and transportation networks will be necessary in order to sustain them. Ultimately, a vote for the affirmation today is an acknowledgement that in order to pursue a policy that will allow more people to engage in plant-based diets, there will be detrimental harms to society, including the enforcement of policies that may harm people who are disadvantaged. I now stand ready for cross-examination.
The negative now has 2 minutes of cross-examination to ask questions of the affirmative team.
Go ahead and start that now. First thing I want to ask you is, how's your speech night going so far?
I'm doing amazing, Mason. Thank you so much for asking.
It's good, no problem. It's a great night. My second question is, you talked about how certain regions would become more dependent on other countries for agriculture, correct?
Correct, I did.
Where do those countries currently get their agriculture from?
Pardon, one more time?
Where do those countries that have limited agriculture, where do they currently get their food goods from?
They still need to transport it in, but I'm saying that the further disinvestment of meat will still harm their sovereignty even further than it already is.
Okay, and finally, you mentioned how the U.S. government slaughtered buffalo to harm Native Americans, correct?
This is correct.
Was that related to plant-based diets?
Yes, it is, because the further disinvestment of removing people from their access to meat will force them to be disinvested from their culture and their way of life that will improve their sovereignty.
Okay, one more question. Does this resolution involve imposing plant-based diets on people?
It does not, but it involves the pursuit of plant-based diets, which means more than allowing the most amount of people possible to have access to plant-based diets.
Okay, thank you. That's my last question.
Thank you, sir.
I now recognize the debater from the Native team to deliver a constructive speech not to exceed 6 minutes.
Okay, brief off-time roadmap. First thing I'm going to do is I'm going to get into my case, establish my counter-contentions, and then I will address some of the things that he brought. So I will go ahead and start now. Okay, today I'm getting the resolution that the pursuit of plant-based diets is harmful for society. So I want to establish that it's well known within society that plant-based diets have a wide array of benefits. It's pretty commonly associated that vegan or vegetarian diets are correlated with health. So, but it's important to consider the other benefits they have. The first benefit I want to bring up is that of the environmental benefit, which is my first contention, which is one of my main arguments. So the first thing that I want to mention is that plant-based diets go a long way to help heal our environment. According to the UCLA Sustainability article, titled "The Case for Plant-Based," says that switching to plant-based diets would decrease our water usage by 50%, as half of our water usage currently goes to livestock animals. So, living in California, I think we all know how often California struggles with water usage. We've been in a drought for a pretty long time at this point. So it's clear how significant that reduction in water usage is, especially when you apply it to everywhere that, every instance in which people switch to plant-based diets. That is 50% less water usage. That is 50% of water that can go to far more beneficial regions. So, but it's worth considering that despite the fact that the water usage decrease is an incredible thing, that is not the only environmental impact of the plant-based diets. It's also worth considering the Guardian's article titled "The Vegan Diet Massively Cuts Environmental Damage, Study Shows." According to them, vegan diets release 75% less carbon emissions than regular diets. So, it's worth considering that obviously we live in a world that is currently suffering from climate change, and it's only going to get worse. So the fact that switching to a vegan diet or a plant-based diet could prove such a significant help in the reduction of carbon emissions is very significant. It's also worth considering how part of my opponent's arguments was the fact that there will be an increase in carbon emissions from the transportation and things of that nature involved in greater trade. But this actually counters that. The 75% less carbon emissions is clearly going to counter the amount of emissions generated from the increased trade of planes, trains, and boats. So it's worth mentioning that in that regard, the environmental benefits far outweigh the environmental damages of plant-based diets. Now that we've established that, let's move on to my counter-contention, which is health benefits. As I mentioned earlier, vegan and vegetarian diets are correlated with health. It's well known that they're an extremely healthy diet to get on. But exactly how healthy they are, I can help demonstrate. So Harvard Health's article, "What is a plant-based diet and why you should try it?" They say, plant-based diets offer all the necessary proteins, fats, carbohydrates, vitamins, and minerals, but are usually higher in fiber. So something else that's often correlated with veganism is a lack of protein. It's often assumed that if you are to go become vegan or participate in a plant-based diet, that you will be sacrificing some of your nutritional wellness in order to do so. That is simply not the case. As Harvard Health says, you can still get all of your protein, all of your essential nutrients within a plant-based diet. So there's a reason why it's superior to regular diets. But that is not the only environment or health benefit. It's also worth mentioning the universityhospitals.org article titled "Plant Nutrition, Good for You and Good for the Planet." They say plant-based diets can help prevent and manage chronic diseases, as well as promoting gastrointestinal, cardiovascular, and mental health. They've also been found to decrease the risk of diabetes, high blood pressure, and even certain kinds of cancer. So that we've established the health benefits, I mean, it's extremely important to emphasize just how significant that is. They can effectively decrease the risk of death from a variety of different diseases, as well as greatly alleviate human suffering. So now that I've established that, I want to move on to the affirmatives case. So in response to my opponent's argument about the colonial implications of a plant-based diet, I have two refutations here. First, we must distinguish between acts of colonialism and support for dietary changes. My opponent describes terrible historical acts, but those are motivated by a desire for power and land, not the same desires that motivate the plant-based movement today. The contemporary movement is focused on the reduction of industrial-scale livestock farming, which is the greatest contributor to things like climate change, deforestation, and resource depletion. Second, the types of small-scale animal husbandry practiced by peoples in the Americas and Arctic regions, as he mentions, constitutes a small portion of global meat production and consumption. The shift towards plant-based diets does not require eliminating those practices. The affirmative even says in their own definition that a plant-based diet involves eating food primarily from plants, not entirely from plants. Which is also why I want to bring up something I asked in cross-examination. I asked, are plant-based diets going to be imposed upon everyone? My opponent agreed, they are not. So we were talking about the benefits of plant-based diets, but we are not imposing plant-based diets on everyone. So all of the harms that they mentioned are not universal. They do not apply to everyone. They might apply to some small communities, but as I mentioned, it's not being enforced upon everyone. Let's go to the affirmative second contention. My opponent argues that a plant-based diet will increase globalization and reliance on transportation networks that can contribute to climate change. I have two responses here. First, we are increasingly transitioning to cleaner forms of energy, including electric vehicles for transportation. Second, cross-apply my argumentation that a plant-based diet is better for the environment. Even if there were an increase in transportation of goods, this offsets the potential harms my opponent describes. Plant-based is still better. I also want to very quickly mention a specific point. He brought up how white rice had a negative impact on Polynesian people when it was introduced, but it's worth mentioning that just because there is an individual item that is plant-based that is not good for you, does not mean that all of plant-based diet is not good for you. It's well known that plant-based diets are very healthy for you and are benefit for everyone who participates in them. It's for these reasons that I negate the resolution that the pursuit of plant-based diets is harmful to society. Thank you. And I stand open for cross-examination.
To ask questions of the negative team.
All right, first off, just checking in really quick how we're feeling so far. It's only been 5 minutes, but
Feeling great.
awesome. How are we all doing out here? Excellent, perfect. My first question, really quick. So, the study cited in your first contention explains how. Did it explain specifically how 75% of carbon emissions will be cut?
No, it did not.
All right, thank you, sir. And do you acknowledge that the food products high in sugar and complex carbohydrates are usually plant-based items?
Yes, but I would say that most plant-based items are healthy for you, even if a minority of them are not.
Okay, but we acknowledge that the biggest contributors to obesity and other health problems are plant-based items. So do you agree on that?
Technically, yes.
Okay, thank you, sir. All right. I believe that ends my cross-examination.
I now recognize the debater from the affirmative team to deliver a rebuttal speech not to exceed 3 minutes.
All right. First of all, we're going to get into some rebuttals to my opponent's case. In rebuttal to his first contention, they are immediately explaining the status quo now. But as I've explained within my own case, a further disinvestment from me will require globalization. While we see environmental positives, the potential harm of an influx of carbon emissions due to increased production of automobiles, shipping vessels, airlines, and energy required to fuel this infrastructure are at great risk of offsetting the potential benefits of plant-based diets could bring. My opponent did not explicitly describe how specifically 75% of carbon emissions would be cut down. He's not taking into account the possibility that the introduction of vehicles that require fossil fuel to function, as well as other energy sources, may possibly offset that. Now onto the rebuttal to the second contention. While there are potential benefits of a plant-based diet, eating this way does not guarantee a better nutritional profile. Plenty of plant-based foods are high in sugar, low in fiber, and devoid of vitamins and minerals. Products such as white rice, white bread, and a plethora of other products high in sugar content are plant-based, but can be inhibiting factors to a healthy diet. Let's not fall into this false dichotomy that plant-based diet inherently good, or meat diet inherently bad. There's a lot of nuance within every nutritional profile. Now, to bolster within my own case, in repetition my opponent's rebuttal on the first contention, while terrible historical acts described were done deliberately, systems of exploitation very rarely require the conscious intention of malevolence on the people who would execute them. All one has to do to participate in oppression and exploitation is believe that they will somehow benefit from the practice. In response to the idea that the indigenous animal husbandry was a small industry, may I remind you that millions of buffalo were slaughtered in a comprehensive attempt to deprive them not only of their meat, but their cultural affinity. A consequence of the pursuit of a plant-based diet may indeed be the subjugation and indoctrination of people and regions into a global capitalist system that will be indifferent to their own consent. And lastly, to bolster my second contention, in refutation to my opponent's rebuttal of my second contention, shifting to cleaner energy may be an inevitability, but the energy technologies and infrastructure of those technologies have yet to exist. We still have our reliance on fossil fuels. Electrical energy is still a long way from being sustainable and on a mass scale. And even if we found a way to circumvent these current technological innovations, we still have to rebuild a lot of these systems from the ground up. To assume that we can make globalization less damaging to the environment is to speculate on a lot of technologies that have yet to be implemented. Ultimately, I'm asking you to consider and remember that it is detriment that we're here to affirm that it is detrimental that these plant-based diets and the pursuit is a detriment to society. I'm asking you to acknowledge the policies and what will be needed to execute these policies and the possible consequences of them. Thank you so much.
I now recognize the debater from the negative team to deliver a rebuttal speech not to exceed 5 minutes.
Okay. Go ahead and start that now. Okay, so the first thing that I want to mention is when we're talking about the buffalo. As my opponent mentioned, seated in Cross, while it's true that the U.S. government did terrible things to Native Americans, and specifically they did exterminate a lot of buffalo to harm Native American communities, but this isn't really connected to plant-based diets. The fact, what we're talking about is the pursuit of plant-based diets. We're not saying this whole economic imperialism argument is kind of tangential and not necessarily correlated to plant-based diets. It's also worth mentioning, something that they mentioned is how the increase in transportation still risks carbon dioxide emissions. And they also mentioned that the technology and the infrastructure for green energy does not exist. But I think, once again, people living in California know that this infrastructure already exists and is already widespread out there. I think there are a few amongst us who have not driven past windmills or have not seen Teslas on the street. The fact is that green energy is here and it's here to stay, and it's very likely that even if this increase in transportation did occur, it would more likely be through green energy and electric vehicles than it is through the current system. So, now that we've established that, I also want to reiterate something. My opponent claimed that it was a false dichotomy, saying that plant-based and meat-based diets or that a plant-based diet is inherently better than a meat-based diet. I've already provided clear evidence as to how a plant-based diet is better. As I mentioned, decreased risk of chronic diseases, diabetes, blood pressure, cancer, all sorts of things. That's clear evidence and examples of plant-based diets being superior to meat-based diets, where my opponent did not provide any instance of a non-plant-based diet being superior to a plant-based diet. I also want to talk about how a lot of what my opponent said was about how the white rice example of how certain plant-based food items can be very unhealthy for you. And I will totally agree with this. There are many plant-based items that are terrible and awful for your health. But the reality is we're not talking about plant-based food items. We're talking about a plant-based diet overall. There is clearly precedence and evidence for the fact that plant-based diets as a whole are beneficial and are better for you. Just because there are a few outlier foods, I guarantee if you ask most people on a plant-based diet, they're not going to be eating rice for every single meal. They're going to be eating green vegetables, things like broccoli and other healthy vegetables. So the health benefits still stands. So to re-go everything, as I mentioned, the plant-based diets have numerous environmental and health benefits. The pursuit of plant-based diets is clearly worth the benefits that we mentioned, despite the costs that some of my opponents have brought up. As I mentioned, decreasing our water usage by 50% and cutting 75% of carbon emissions from our diet, that's huge. That's an enormous impact on the climate situation, and it's an enormous benefit for the world as a whole as we see climate change continue to worsen. So, and there are also, as I mentioned, the myriad health benefits. So it's very clear that the pursuit of plant-based diets is not harmful for society, and for these reasons, I suggest that you vote for the negation. Thank you very much.
I now recognize the debater from the affirmative team to deliver a rebuttal speech not to exceed 3 minutes.
All right, just for formality, just got to check in one more time. Thank you all so much for evaluating this debate tonight and coming out to support the community college. And thank you, Mr. Trump, for representing the nation. I want to kind of borrow a term that my opponent used, and is that our argument is ultimately one of economic realism. Remember, this is not about personal decision or personal health benefits or personal nutritional profiles. The resolution today is the pursuit of a plant-based diet is detrimental to society. I'm asking you today to acknowledge the policy and the implications of those policies. Yes, my argument exactly is economic realism. We have to acknowledge that we in the United States are very privileged to have a robust agricultural industry. But a lot of places in the world, places like the Pacific Islands, places like the desert regions of the world, people living in the Arctic do not have the privilege of having a robust and independent agricultural economy. We'll have to acknowledge that in order to pursue, like I said, pursue and further disinvest the world from the meat consumption, we have to engage in certain policies that will not be a choice for certain peoples. The colonization argument is now outside the bounds of this resolution. There are people in this world who are going to have to rely on powers like the United States in order to supply them with their food sustenance. And I just want to outline that in order to make this happen, we're going to not only remove their sovereignty, remove their economic independence because they're going to have to rely on us for food sustenance, we also are going to have to bolster our globalization. I'm all for the idea that eventually there will be probably clean energy sources, but as it stands right now, we all know that shipping, airlines, and automobiles are some of the biggest threats to global warming in the world right now. In order to make a system where pursuing a plant-based diet and a policy on a global socio-political scale is going to require that we bolster those systems. More shipping vessels, more airlines, more roads, more automobiles, and further reliance on fossil fuels and energy sources that are currently damaging the planet. Today, I'm asking you not to be against plant-based diets. I want you to acknowledge, look on the grand scale, what kind of policies are we going to have to do, and what are they going to be required to do in order to implement them? Who's going to suffer? Who's going to take the brunt of the damage? And just because it's happening to a small amount of people does not mean it's not detrimental to society. So ultimately, acknowledgement today that we affirm the resolution, the pursuit of a plant-based diet is detrimental to society, not because it's bad for the individual or it's bad for certain communities, but on a comprehensive whole, the consequence of implementing these policies on a socio-political scale may be detrimental. And if I can encourage you, we affirm today that we have affirmed this resolution and convinced you the affirmers should win this debate.
One more big round of applause for the entire engagement. All right, so debates do have winners and losers, and we're going to let you be the judge of that. So we're going to do a little audience applause here. I got the decibel counter up on my screen right now. So if at the end of this debate, you feel that Mason on the negative has convinced you that we ought not to support this resolution, let me hear you now. 94 decibels is the number to beat. But if, at the end of this debate, you are convinced that Ethan, on the affirmative, has convinced you to adopt the resolution, let me hear you now. We just cleared 100 decibels. So thank you all for coming out. Good night.